Gentlemen, I am curious. Did you, I don't know, you guys are somewhat politically conscious. You watch some of this stuff from time to time. Sometimes we share competing propaganda against each other in a group chat. I'm curious. Did you get a chance to watch the Fox News interview of Kamala Harris last night?
I have Fox News blacked out on my TV. I can only watch it for sports. I wouldn't put on Fox News with your money. So the answer is no, never.
I did not see that coming. Okay. I don't really want to talk about the interview, but I
Thank God.
actually, as I was watching the interview, I was thinking of you, Tom, if you can believe that.
Okay.
And so I wrote down a few
I don't want to
questions.
know this, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, wasn't the whole gist of it that, and again, I didn't watch it, and you did send it to us. I didn't see the hyperlink, or I would have watched it. I apologize, because I like to be prepared for your segment, because I'm usually in the dark here with Sosnoff about everything he talks about, and Sosnoff just belittles me, and then he looks good, and we go on.
You're better off. Don't
we go on to the next segment. But wasn't the whole
Yeah.
gist of the interview that she's now going to separate from Biden kind of policies? Was that it or no?
I think that I'm not sure if that was the goal. That might have been the goal, to put some distance between her and the previous administration and distance between her and her competitor. I'm not so sure she succeeded.
What's your point, though?
Yeah.
What do you want to know?
Here's as I was listening to it, the thing that came into my mind over and over and over was just I wasn't fully listening to it as sort of like a political participant. I was listening to it as like a public speaker as well. And I tend to do that no matter who I'm listening to. I'm listening to substance, but I'm judging them on their their public speaking. I'm curious, Tom, of all the leadership traits, how important is authenticity to you?
How important is authenticity? I think it's important to everybody. It's important to me.
How could it not be anything else, Victor?
Yeah, I mean, how is it not important?
I agree that it is important. Let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
From a leadership perspective, how do you convey? You are not a guy who shies away from having an opinion. And we live in a world that wants to be defined by boundaries: what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what's okay to talk about in public, what's not okay to talk about in public. You're not afraid to communicate your true, authentic opinion. And then times, there's risk associated with that. I'm just curious, what does Tom Sosnoff think about the importance of remaining authentic and expressing your true point of view? If somebody asks you a tough question, you answer that question authentically. What's the Tom Sosnoff recipe for authenticity in today's world?
Authenticity is, in today's world, you basically have to be authentic. Otherwise, you don't get to participate in social, or you don't get to participate in really anything. You don't even get the interview. But you have to realize, most people, there's very little. Almost everybody is authentic. They could be idiots. They could be off their rocker. They could be out of their freaking minds, but they're authentic. Like, I don't ever look at, I'll look at certain politicians and I'll go, this person could be the biggest idiot I've ever seen in my entire life. Or it could be somebody else. It doesn't have to be a politician. It can be an entertainer. It can be a rock star. I don't care who it is, but it could be a sports analyst, whatever. They're all authentic. I don't think we see a lot of fake anymore. It's too hard to be fake because everybody can see right through it. So I don't think it's about authenticity. I don't really think that's ever the issue. I think everybody's authentic. But the problem we have is that some people are authentic, and then that's what, they're still idiots. Like, being authentic doesn't give you an excuse for being an idiot. That's the problem.
And an idiot would just be somebody who had a different opinion than the person who was watching?
An idiot would be somebody who has a different opinion than you, yes.
Like, if I say I want the Mets-Yankees Subway Series, you're an idiot. You really want the,
Of
Mets.
course.
Yeah, got it.
Of course.
Got it.
But you're still authentic. When you say you want the Mets-Yankees, I believe you. That's authentic. But
I'm an idiot because it's not agreed with what you wanted.
Yes, exactly.
All right, let me ask you this. I'm going to go a slightly different direction. I look at price. I'm not certain if the economy is as strong as like the nominal price of equities. I'm not sure if that matters, but let's assume it isn't. What would you say to the leaders out there about leading through challenging times? How do you articulate a vision with substance and excitement?
How do you articulate a vision with substance and excitement? I mean, that's generally, if you are in that position, it is very hard to get to that position without being able to articulate it. Unfortunately, in this election, and I assume this is where you're going. Unfortunately, in this election, we have two candidates, and neither of whom can articulate that vision, because neither can articulate any of the details, which is the sad part. But I think for most cases, if you're in the position that you're being asked that question, other than being a politician, I'm pretty sure you can answer it. Well, here, I'll give you an example. When we used to do interviews on Tasty, we would do these, we did this show called Bootstrapping, and we interview all these young entrepreneurs, tons and tons of them, thousands of young entrepreneurs. And the question always came up, for me, their ability to articulate their business model, their ability to articulate how they were ever going to get to a situation of, let's call it positive cash flow or free cash flow, used to be a huge tell as to whether or not they're going to be successful. And you would be surprised that I would say 75% could not articulate, their model, their revenue model, and their cash flow model. And I thought that would just blow me away. I think in the political world, we have the same problem. Very few can, well, I shouldn't say very few, but this time around, very few people can really articulate certain situations. Like, do they have a real great grasp of the economy? No, not really. Do they have a real great grasp of markets? No, not really. Do they have a real great grasp of lots of different things? And the answer is probably not. They have a little bit of everything, not a real great grasp of anything.
Yeah. So I wasn't going anywhere actually with the question. I more or less I wanted to hear what you would say about these things, because as I listen to both sides, not just the interview yesterday, I see, as a public speaker, I see a lack of authenticity. Somebody asks you a question, you can give your line, but at the end of the day, you've got to come back and address the original root question. Otherwise, the audience is going to get, whether you mean it or not, the audience is going to come away with a sense of inauthenticity.
Well, have you been watching this entire election cycle? Not one person has answered a question. You're confusing authenticity with intelligence. You're confusing authenticity with, there's a reason that, like, for example, that Trump doesn't answer questions about the economy. He's just too stupid. There's a reason that Kamala doesn't answer certain questions. She just doesn't get it. Okay, it's not that hard. It's just like, I don't know what.
Can you answer a quick question for me then?
Sure.
When will, and you're a TikToker, right? You watch a lot of TikToks, so
sure.
you know what I'm going to talk about here in a moment. When will you be doing the Dudes for Kamala dance? That's what I want to know. Can you answer that for me?
Don't read your emails from.
Can you do that for me, please?
Don't read your emails from your.
So you're not answering the question.
Well, no, but that's not even a question. That's like,
I asked when you're going to do it. You can say I'm not doing it, or I'm going to do it on Tuesday.
No, or you don't even respond to certain stupidity. But getting back to your thing, Victor, it's not about being authentic. I don't for one second think Trump's not authentic. He is. That is who he is. I don't for one second think Kamala's not being authentic. That is who she is. They are as authentic as you can be, both of them. I don't question authenticity at all. I question different levels of know-how and knowledge and intelligence, but I don't question authenticity.
I agree with that. I'm saying more or less from a perception point of view versus trying to stick some personality trait on them. I'm saying more from a perception point of view. I think the other part that I see is sort of this inability to communicate a challenge to the American people. Like, one of my favorite quotes is, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And I just feel like we want to say yes to everybody. We want to give things to everybody. But what we don't want to do in leadership is challenge anyone. And you know what I've learned from you, the reason I wanted to ask you these questions is I think what you have taught me about leadership is the importance of a challenge. People want to respond to a challenge. You give somebody something, and maybe they'll be happy that you gave it to them. But in 3 months, you got to give them something again. But if you challenge somebody, that tends to have recursive long-term compounding returns. And I wonder, it seems like for all of the differences in style and substance and maybe policy at a micro level, the one thing missing in both sides is the ability, the grit, the chutzpah to go out there and issue a challenge to the American people.
Yeah.
And I wonder, what do you think about that, Tom?
I think that's a very valid, that one of the reasons, if you remember going all the way back to the early days of Tasty, what Tony and I said was, we're not gonna change finance. We're gonna challenge finance. And we're gonna challenge individuals. The reason that we thought Tasty would be successful is because we're gonna challenge people with topics that they haven't been introduced to before and they haven't been challenged with before. And it worked. I think people respond to a challenge. I am sad that the challenge for politicians is to win. The challenge for politicians is not to really understand and not to have the know-how that they need. I think the challenge is in the wrong place. They should respond to every challenge. There are plenty of smart people that can respond to virtually every challenge. There are commentators on both sides of the aisle that are so much better at responding to, questions and challenges and all that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, it's a little sad that our politicians can't do that. I don't understand why either. It's not that hard.
All right.
But I do love the idea that people should be challenged. I think that
the American people, the American spirit, American ingenuity is capable of so much. Yeah. But if we're going to tell everybody that we're victims or that we don't have the ability to thrive or that we're in for hard times, tough times ahead, the American people can respond to tough news. Whether it's immigration, it's inflation, it's
that's the playbook.
The need to rally around war.
That's the playbook. Come on.
You got to issue the challenge. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna leave you with this. I'm obligated. Ilya and my good friend Chris Vecchio, they make me say inflation on everyone. I'm obligated. The macro crew, we have to talk about inflation on all of our segments. So I'm going to leave you with this. The last inflationary period we had was during the late 60s through the early 80s. There were 5 presidents during that period of time. We had 3 waves of inflation. Of those 5 presidents, how many were reelected?
And what's the time period?
Starts at Nixon. That's your hint.
Starts at Nixon. How many were reelected?
Late 60s through the early 80s. There were 5 presidents, and I see Tony Googling it as we speak.
Oh, no. I'm answering an email and surfing porn right now. No. I am not. I'm being authentic.
How many presidents were reelected since then? Well, there's been Obama.
No. There were listen. There were 5 presidents through the inflationary period that lasted through the late 60s and the early 80s. So we're starting at Nixon.
Carter is the one that comes to my mind, and I didn't Google search.
Yeah.
How many of the 5 earned a re-election? Of the
0.
5?
I'm just going to take a guess since you're asking the question.
If you're including Reagan, which I'm not sure, Reagan was reelected. I think he's the only one of that group. Only Reagan.
You're good. I gave you a hint, though. I said Nixon. Nixon did get reelected, even though he resigned.
So, that was weird. But only
you were kind of right. 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 were not reelected. So here's the political lesson to learn from this. It doesn't matter who wins the election. If price levels continue to rise, people are going to be pissed and they're going to vote the opposite direction for the next election. So everyone putting all the chips in 2024. Just the odds say in 2028 we're going to swing the other way.
Well, I don't think everybody's putting the reason I think we swing the other way in 2028 is I just think in 4 years we're done with, we're not going to have a situation where the 2 candidates that win the primaries are going to be in their late 70s. Or 80 years old or 78
we said that
or 80.
8 years ago, too.
No, I know, but it's got to be
maybe
over.
this time, since they're not in their 70s anymore, they'll be in their 80s.
That's never going to happen again.
Yeah, maybe.
We're done with
that. It'll be over. That'll be over.
Yeah, we're done with 78-year-old, 82-year-old people. It's not going to happen. We're getting younger, and it's just the way it's going to be in the future. So I think 28 is going to be completely different. The question is, what happens over the next 4 years? I don't think the market's going to care that much who wins. I really don't.
As long as you get a locked Congress, they're the exact same person. That's what nobody, even though there's their budget projections, one says $3 trillion, the other says $7.5 trillion. Well, that's because one is claiming that they're going to implement a 25% unrealized capital gains tax on anybody with a net worth greater than $100 million, which they know is not going to pass, but that gets included in the CBO budget. What is true is there's proposals as written are going to explode the deficit, or the debt by another $5 to $7 trillion. And it doesn't matter what color they are. That's the truth.